On a bright summer morning, the sun shone warmly over a vast green meadow. In this meadow lived an ant named Andy and a grasshopper named Greg. Andy was a hardworking little ant. Every day, from sunrise to sunset, he carried tiny grains of food back to his nest, preparing for the cold winter ahead. Meanwhile, Greg, the carefree grasshopper, spent his days singing, playing, and lying lazily in the sun. One afternoon, as Andy was struggling to carry a heavy grain of rice, Greg hopped over and laughed. "Why do you work so hard, Andy?" he asked, stretching his long legs. "There's plenty of food now. Come, enjoy the sunshine and sing with me." Andy wiped his brow and shook his head. "I must gather food while I can, Greg. Winter will be here before we know it, and then there will be nothing to eat." Greg chuckled and waved his hand dismissively. "Winter is far away. There's no need to worry about that now. You should relax and have fun." But Andy ignored him and continued working. Day after day, Andy and his fellow ants marched tirelessly, collecting food and storing it deep inside their nest. Meanwhile, Greg continues to sing and dance, enjoying the warm weather without a single worry. Then, one fateful morning, the wind turned cold, and the bright green meadow was soon covered in a blanket of snow. The trees stood bare, and the once abundant food had disappeared under the frost. Greg wakes up, shivering. His stomach growled loudly. "Oh no," he thought, "I have no food." He searched everywhere, but the fields were empty. The berries he once nibbled on had shriveled, and the insects he used to catch had all disappeared. Desperate, Greg remembered Andy. "Surely he has plenty of food," Greg thought. "Maybe he will share with me." Greg makes his way through the thick snow and reaches the entrance of the ant's nest. He knocked on the tiny wooden door, his legs shaking from hunger and cold. Andy opened the door, his home warm and cozy, filled with food that he had carefully stored. "Greg," he said, surprised. "What brings you here?" Greg rubbed his arms and looked down, embarrassed. "Andy, my friend, I am cold and starving. I didn't prepare for winter like you did. Can you please share some food with me?" Andy sighed, remembering how Greg had wasted the summer. "I warned you, Greg. I told you to prepare, but you chose to play instead." Greg lowered his head. "I know, Andy. I was foolish. I thought summer would last forever. Now I see that hard work is important." Andy looked at Greg's sad face and felt pity for him. "I will help you this time, Greg," he said. "But promise me that next year you will work hard and prepare for winter like we do." Greg nodded eagerly. "I promise, Andy. I have learned my lesson." Andy invited Greg inside, giving him warm food and a place to rest. From that day forward, Greg never wasted another summer. He worked alongside the ants, storing food and preparing for the future. When the next winter came, Greg was no longer hungry or cold, because this time he had worked hard just like Andy.